Good evening, I'm David Kramer with the Alaska Weather Show. As always, call our weather info line 1-800-472-0391. Get any updates to the forecast through that means. You can also check out any watches, warnings, or advisories that we have out. You can check out our website at weather.gov/Alaska, get any weather information through that means as well. You can also email us at the email address on the bottom. You can follow us on Facebook and on Twitter. Starting off, we'll take a quick look at the advisories and warnings that we have out for the area. Along the west coast of the state, we do have several winter weather advisories out for blowing snow conditions in those locations, all of which will be starting tomorrow at around 6 a.m. for all along the coastline for the YK Delta area up through the Bering Strait area, including St. Lawrence Island. The more northerly ones will be stopping tomorrow evening, Thursday evening at 9 p.m. However, the Kuskokwim Delta one will expire a little bit sooner, around 1 p.m. on Thursday. As we look out further to the east and the southeastern part of the state, southern portions of the Panhandle do have a winter weather advisory out for snow that is valid now until 6 a.m. on Thursday. And then as we look up further to the north, especially starting off in the eastern part of the Brooks Range down into the upper Yukon Valley, we have blowing snow conditions there. However, those should be expiring fairly soon this evening at 6 p.m. That is Wednesday evening at 6 p.m. Then we will have the remainder of the Brooks Range to include all the places out to the east as well, and the Arctic coastline all seeing some wind chill conditions that will be lasting through tonight into tomorrow morning, that is Thursday morning. Taking a look now at the satellite imagery, we can see some of the clearing up to the north that is allowing for some of those colder temperatures to dip down, where even just a little bit of wind is resulting in wind chill conditions over much of the Arctic coastline and through the Brooks Range. Further down in the Gulf, we can see an area of low pressure moving here that is bringing up a lot of moisture from the south, resulting in the heavy amounts of snow that is being seen in southern locations of the Panhandle. Moving out to the west, we can see our system moving in. We can see the front out ahead of that system starting to push through the central Aleutian Islands, with cloud cover extending out over the Pribilof Islands and eastern portions of the Aleutians. And we can watch one more time behind the front. We can see some of that convective showers moving in with some of the colder air there, bringing some snow showers to areas of the western Aleutian Islands. Taking a look for the remainder of the day, we can see now some of those snow showers pushing into the western Aleutians, with this front bringing up some warmer air, so places of the central Aleutian Islands and out towards the eastern Aleutian Islands as well, mixing from the snow to rain as some of the warmer air comes in. However, as the cold front pushes in, cold air are going to filter in behind, resulting in more snow showers in the area. Out ahead of the area, or out ahead of the front, we do have some areas of snow headed towards the Pribilof Islands. And then along the west coast of the state, we are seeing some lighter areas of snow showers up by the YK Delta area and down by the Alaska Peninsula as well. And then as we look up into the Brooks Range, as we talked about earlier, we do have some of those areas of blowing snow up in the eastern part of the Brooks Range. And as we drop down into the central and eastern parts of the interior, some snow out there. And then down in the Alaska Range as well, we are expecting to see some snow. And then areas of the eastern part of south central Alaska, seeing some snow there too. As we move out to the Panhandle area, we are seeing some of the warmer air start to push in, but on most interior locations still expecting to see snow, where we are having that winter weather advisory for snow in effect. As we move into tonight, pretty similar conditions for the Panhandle area, seeing snow in those more inside waters, but rain as we get out on the Gulf side as our system starts to push off to the south and east, starting to leave our area. Out over mainland Alaska, we are going to have high pressure building in, resulting in some clear skies for many locations. As we move further to the south, we are expecting to see some fog develop along the southwestern portion of the state, including the Bristol Bay area and up into the lower Kuskokwim Valley. Then as we look out over our front, starting to push through the central part of the Bering Sea, at this point starting to bring up enough warm air to get some rain towards the Pribilof Islands area, but out ahead of that we are still expecting to see snow, with areas of blowing snow up by the St. Lawrence Island and Bering Strait areas. Behind the system, some cold air bringing in some snow showers to the central Aleutian Islands and out to the west towards the western Aleutian Islands. For Thursday, we do have that frontal system pushing even further to the north, starting to bring more snow into the Bering Strait area, where we are seeing some areas of blowing snow up there starting to make their way closer towards the Kotzebue Sound area, down into the Norton Sound area as well, expecting to see some areas of blowing snow as this front pushes through. Further to the south, going to see the snow, but not enough winds to really have a lot of blowing snow conditions there. For down into the Bristol Bay area as well, expecting to see some snow, but enough warm air further to the south, expecting that to be rain for the Alaska Peninsula. Then out over the northern part of the Bering Sea, we are going to have some snow showers, but we have another system coming up from the south that's going to bring more warm air and rain to the central Aleutian Islands. A little bit colder out to the west, the western Aleutians expecting to see a mix of snow and rain for those locations. As we move out over mainland Alaska, high pressure still dominating the central portions of mainland Alaska and the eastern portions as well, not expecting to see a lot of activity. And while we do have some snow showers a little bit to the north of the Panhandle, expecting conditions to clear out for the Panhandle area on Thursday as this low pressure system continues to push off to the south and east. As we look into Friday, continuing to see a clearing for much of the Panhandle area with some showers just to the north and to the south in the Gulf. Much of mainland Alaska pretty clear in terms of precipitation for the central and eastern portions, but our front is starting to push more inland now, and this is actually from the low that we saw by the central Aleutians on Thursday, now pushing further to the north, extending its front across the southwestern portion of the state, similarly to the previous front on Thursday, now resulting in more blowing snow conditions up by the Bering Strait area, Kotzebue Sound area, some snow down the west coast of the state, with some areas of rain as we get further towards the Bristol Bay area with some warmer air down there. And then some rain for the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutian Islands, getting colder as we get further off to the west, expecting to see some snow for the central and western Aleutians. Taking a look now at our temperatures, starting off for the Aleutian Islands, low temperatures for Thursday morning, dropping down to just at or below freezing for many locations in the Aleutians. Pribilof Island's going to be a little bit colder, St. Paul down to 27 degrees for Thursday morning. Down in the Bristol Bay area, dropping down into the teens for most locations. That's going to be true in the YK Delta as well. McCormick staying a little bit warmer there, 22 degrees. Dropping below zero, however, as we get by the Seward Peninsula, with Nome dropping down to minus 12 tonight, as well as Kotzebue. Then along the Arctic coastline into the upper teens, and some places dropping below minus 20 along the Arctic coastline. Warmer as we get out by Kaktovik, only dropping down to minus 7 degrees tonight. Down into the interior part of the state, more northern locations, seeing temperatures staying below zero with Galena at minus 7, but the rest of the interior staying in the positive digits, but in the single digits as well. And as we drop down into south central Alaska, seeing temperatures dropping down into the teens for many interior locations. However, places along the coastline expecting to stay in the 20s for many locations, with Valdez staying a little bit warmer there at 25 degrees, and Kodiak only dropping down to 31 degrees. As we move into the Panhandle area, dropping down into the 20s for most locations, except as we get closer towards the Gulf, some places could actually stay above freezing for tonight into Thursday morning. So look into Thursday afternoon. We will have temperatures rise above freezing for pretty much all locations along the Panhandle, with areas closest to the Gulf getting up towards 40 degrees. As we move into south central Alaska, we have temperatures getting up around or just above freezing along the North Gulf Coast, with Cordova getting up to 34 degrees Thursday afternoon. In the 20s for many locations along the Cook Inlet corridor up into the Susitna Valley. But as we get out over the Glen Allen area, temperatures staying a little bit colder there, only getting up to around 9 degrees. In the interior, most locations staying in the single digits to the lower teens, with Fairbanks getting up to 14 degrees. And as we move through the pass, we're going to see temperatures around minus 7 degrees for highs, and all the way along the Arctic coastline, staying in the double digits below zero for most places for highs, until we get to some of the more eastern locations. Kaktovik, again, staying a little bit warmer there at minus 4 degrees for the afternoon high on Thursday. Dropping down the west coast of the state, getting up into above 0 degrees as we get into the Norton Sound area, and then up around 20 degrees as we get into the YK Delta area. Up into the mid-20s to upper 20s for the Bristol Bay area, and above freezing all the way along the Aleutian Islands, around 40 degrees there. Dropping down for Friday morning, down into the mid-30s for places of the Aleutian Islands, down into the single digits or right around 10 degrees for Bristol Bay area, single digits for the YK Delta area, down below zero for the Norton Sound area, and that's going to be true of the Kotzebue Sound area as well, dropping down to the negative in the teens. And then as we get along the Arctic coastline, dropping down to around minus 30 for most locations. Down in the interior part of the state, in the -20s for locations to the west, but as we get further to the east, a little bit warmer, -teens there. Single digits for much of south central Alaska and right below freezing for the Panhandle. Afternoon temperatures above freezing in the Panhandle, staying in right around zero for much of mainland Alaska, in the -20s as we get further to the north and warmer out for the Bristol Bay area. Back shortly with the aviation.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
For the aviation segment, we will start off with a quick look at our flying weather. Out over the Bering Sea, we have a lot of widespread MVFR conditions over the central and western part of the Bering Sea, to include the western Aleutians. Then as we track our front through the eastern part of the Bering Sea, we will see some IFR conditions there, including the eastern Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula. As we look further out over mainland part of the state, starting up along the Arctic coastline, we'll see some MVFR conditions there on Thursday morning. And then over the central and eastern parts of the interior as well. South central Alaska expected to be VFR, and we will see worse conditions as we get further to the south of the Panhandle, with MVFR conditions in the central Panhandle and IFR conditions as we get further to the south. Thursday afternoon, those conditions are going to clear up. We are expecting to see VFR conditions Thursday afternoon for southeastern part of the state as well as south central. And then some areas of MVFR for the eastern part of the interior. However, as we get over towards our front impacting the southwestern part of the state, we will see some IFR conditions moving in over the YK Delta and the western portions of the Seward Peninsula, as well as down by the Alaska Peninsula. As we move out further to the west over the western part of the Bering Sea and Aleutian Islands, we will see some MVFR conditions out that way. Friday morning, widespread MVFR conditions through much of the Bering Sea, with some IFR conditions as we get to the eastern Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula. As we move up into the YK Delta area, going to see some IFR conditions there, with some MVFR conditions pushing into the western parts of the interior, to include areas around Galena. Up along the Arctic coastline, we will see some VFR conditions there, and that's going to be true through much of the rest of the interior down into south central and for the Panhandle on Friday morning. Friday afternoon, pretty similar conditions for the Panhandle expected, as well as for south central Alaska. All the interior is going to be pretty cleared out, as well as the Arctic coastline, but we will see some MVFR conditions creeping in on the southwestern portion of the state, including the Bristol Bay area, where we will also see some IFR conditions. For the Bering Sea and Aleutian Islands, going to see widespread MVFR conditions Friday afternoon. Taking a look now at our pass conditions for Thursday, starting up north at Anaktuvuk Pass, going to be VFR conditions expected on Thursday, as well as Adigan Pass. Moving down into the Alaska Range, Lake Clark and Merrill both should be VFR for Thursday, as well as Rainy Pass. However, as we get further to the north, windy will start off in VFR, but pretty quickly in the morning, changing over to VFR. And then in Isabel Pass, going to start off in VFR, and in the afternoon transitioning to VFR conditions. Mentasta Pass should, however, be marginal conditions throughout the day on Thursday. Taking us down into the passes around Prince William Sound, Tanita Pass, VFR conditions expected Thursday, as well as Portage. Then out over the Panhandle, Chilkoot and White both expected to be VFR for the day on Thursday. Taking a look now at our freezing levels, starting off in the Panhandle area, we have our surface freezing line moving up into the northern parts of the Gulf coastline, where it's going to hug the coastline down just to the east of the Kenai Peninsula and Kodiak Island. And then as we move out through the Alaska Peninsula and then out over the northern parts of the Bering Sea, tongue of warmer air coming in from the south behind our front, and we are going to see some of those warmer heights getting there around 6,000 feet on Thursday. As we look at our icing, above 2,000 feet expected for the western Aleutian Islands. Along the west coast, where we have our front pushing in, between 2,000 and 8,000 feet expected there. And then out over the Panhandle, above 5,000 feet expected in that location. For our jet, we do have a portion of the jet moving in over the Panhandle area of southeastern direction around 75 knots. Out over mainland Alaska, the eastern portions of the mainland, 80 knots out of a northerly direction. Then out over the southern portions of the Bering Sea, 120 knots out of a south to southwest direction. As we move down to 9,000 feet, strongest winds around our low just to the southeast, around 70 knots there, dropping down pretty quickly as we get into the more northern locations of the Bering Sea, down to around 40 knots there. Still pretty strong around the Alaska Peninsula, 75 knots out of a westerly direction. Pretty weak over the northern parts of mainland Alaska, a little bit stronger out of a northerly direction for the south central area, around 20 to 25 knots. And then weak southeasterly flow around 15 knots for the Panhandle. Moving into or down to 3,000 feet, weaker flow around 20 knots over the Panhandle area, 15 to 20 knots out of a northerly flow for south central. Lighter winds as we get further to the north. However, winds are going to pick up out of a southerly direction along the west coast by the YK Delta around 55 knots there. Strongest winds again out by our low by the western Bering Sea, where we will have winds out of a southerly direction around 65 knots there. Diminishing as we get further to the east, however, stronger to 80 knots south of the central Aleutian Islands. For our turbulence, as expected with the stronger winds, we will see some turbulence below 4,000 feet out over the central and western Aleutian Islands. And then the southwest portions of the state below 4,000 feet, getting up to as high below 6,000 feet out over areas around south central and by the Yakutat area. We'll be back shortly with the marine forecast.
It used to be that you could only warn one person about a tornado after it had already blown down someone else's barn.
Now, on average, we're able to issue a tornado warning 15 minutes before the tornado's even there, and that wouldn't be happening without Doppler radar.
This NexRad system has reduced fatalities on the order of 45% due to tornadoes since its advent.
We have a lot more information now about storms and being able to understand how they develop, how they produce severe weather, and how that information might be used to improve warnings for our National Weather Service partners.
The lab is unique in that we serve the nation by supporting the National Weather Service in its mission to protect lives and safe property by improving the accuracy and the lead time of severe weather warnings.
We have a legacy of radar research and converting existing technology from military to weather purposes.
A recycled Doppler radar led to the development of NexRad, installed nationwide in the early 90s. It allowed forecasters to see storms like never before.
Not only did we help bring that technology to the National Weather Service and to help protect lives and property, but we have continued to upgrade that technology, keep it relevant, and keep it state-of-the-art.
Recently, a major upgrade was added. Dual polarization technology takes the radar from 2D to 3D. Forecasters now know more about what type of precipitation is falling, which is very helpful during winter storms, as well as how much rain is accumulating, resulting in better flash flood warnings. The radar can also detect and track tornadoes based on debris. Looking to the future, the National Severe Storms Lab is testing the capabilities of phased array radar. Originally used by the U.S. Navy, the antenna scans the skies electronically rather than mechanically, allowing the radar to focus on a storm.
With current technology, we get a full picture or image of what is going on within a storm every 4 to 5 minutes. So it's more like a snapshot. Whereas with phased array radar, we get that picture of what's going on in the storm every minute. So it becomes more like watching a movie. So we can do adaptive, rapid scanning on the storms that matter most, being able to provide the information that's most relevant when and where it's happening.
Another advantage of phased array radar is its multifunction capability, providing weather and air traffic information simultaneously.
Number one, it is a system that promises to replace and expand upon the existing weather surveillance radars. Secondly, to replace aging air traffic surveillance radars. And number three, it offers a potential application to meet Department of Homeland Security and defense requirements for identifying and tracking non-cooperative aircraft. With the replacement of all these various radars with a single system, the American taxpayer could realize substantial savings in cost.
You have a lot fewer radars to maintain, and the electronic capability of this also reduces maintenance costs because you do not have moving parts.
Not too long ago, the ability to predict severe weather was thought to be impossible. During the past several decades, research conducted at the National Severe Storms Lab has developed life-saving tools like Doppler radar. We've progressed from no warning of threatening weather to about a 15-minute lead time and current research promises to extend that much further.
Our knowledge of severe storms and how they behave, and our use and ability to use the Doppler radar technology is in a lot of cases a direct result of that close working relationship, that research to operations component that we get between the National Severe Storms Laboratory and a forecast office.
That history and understanding of how these data can be used by our users and doing the research to help advance the use of radar technology, really it's what we live for, it's in our lifeblood, it's in our history.
It's now easier than ever to be a part of weather research. We just launched the mPing app for both iPhone and Android users, and it's totally free. PING, which stands for Precipitation Identification Near the Ground, is a research project by the NOAA National Severe Storms Lab and the University of Oklahoma. With the mobile app, you can send us your weather observations on the go. Are snowflakes falling on your head? Is hail hitting your car? Just select what type of precipitation is falling and press submit. It's that easy. It takes about 5 seconds and it's anonymous. Reports can then be viewed online. Our scientists will compare your report with what the radar has detected. This helps us develop new radar technologies and techniques. Download the app today, share your reports, and let's work together to make our nation weather ready. Learn more here and follow us.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back for the marine section. We'll start off with a quick look at our ice edge. Over the last couple days with all the southerly winds and warmer temperatures, we did have some areas in the Norton Sound area starting to break up, and we did actually have some shore-fast ice along the Yukon Delta coastline break up and push a little bit to the north. However, with the cold that we've had over last night, we did have some flash freezing in the area, and we do have ice cover over the area now. But over the next couple days, Thursday and Friday, we will have some new fronts coming up that could break up some of that ice again. We also have some ice out in the Cook Inlet area down towards Calgon Island, and some ice in some portions of the Bristol Bay area. Taking a look now for the main part of the Marines, starting off in southeastern part of the state, we do have some strong gusty winds out of the north in the inside waters, gusting up as high as 60 knots as we get closer towards Skagway area. In the Gulf, we have speeds up as high as 30 knots, diminishing down to 20 knots as we get further to the south, with seas as high as 15 feet furthest to the south. As we move into Friday, we are looking at continued northerly flow in the inside waters, with the strongest winds again up further to the north, gusting as high as 55 knots near the Skagway area. Out over the Gulf, we have northerly flow 20 to 25 knots, highest as we get further to the north, with seas highest as we get further to the south, up to as high as 12 feet. Out over the south central area, we have primarily northerly flow for most locations, with Prince William Sound seeing some stronger gusts up to 45 knots, and gusting just outside of Prince William Sound up to as high as 50 knots, with sustained winds around 30 knots. As we look further out towards the west by the Barren Islands, we do have winds getting up to gale force around 35 knots there, dropping down to small crafts around 25 knots in the southern portions of Cook Inlet. Then on Friday, we have northeasterly flow in Cook Inlet area anywhere from 10 to 20 knots, highest as we get further to the south. Around the Barren Islands, northwesterly flow as high as 30 knots east of the Barren Islands. And then in the North Gulf coastline, we have winds out of a northerly direction, 10 to 20 knots, highest there just south of Prince William Sound. As we look out over the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island areas, northwesterly flow through Shelikof Strait, gusting as high as 35 knots. Seas getting up to as high as 11 feet on the eastern side of Kodiak Island. Winds in Bristol Bay a little bit different, out of an easterly direction around 30 knots there, and then southerly flow around 25 knots as we get further out along the Alaska Peninsula. On Friday, we have flow around Kodiak Island out of a northwesterly direction, 15 to 25 knots there, transitioning, becoming easterly in Bristol Bay area around 30 knots there. Southerly flow around the rest of The Alaska Peninsula, 30 to 35 knots, strongest as we get further off to the west, with seas as high as 13 feet furthest off to the west as well. Taking a look now out the Aleutian Islands, southwesterly flow 20 to 30 knots by the eastern Aleutian Islands, picking up pretty significantly as we get further off to the west with storm force winds by the western Aleutian Islands, around 55 knots there. Seas up into the 40s, 43 feet expected near the western Aleutian Islands on Thursday, diminishing as we get further to the east down to around 25 feet as we get by the central Aleutian Islands. And as we look into Friday, southwesterly flow 35 to 40 knots for much of the Aleutian Islands. That's going to be true as we move further off to the east as well, with the weakest winds on the Pacific side of the eastern Aleutians, around 30 knots there. Seas diminishing now to 21 to 26 feet. As you look along the west coast of the state, we do have primarily southerly flow, 30 to 40 knots. Most locations seeing 40 knots as we get closer towards the west coast until we get into the Norton Sound area. Easterly winds around 30 knots there. Then on Friday, flow becoming more easterly, southeast flow along the southwest coast of the state, 45 knots there, becoming more southerly as we get by the Pribilof Islands, around 35 knots, picking up as we get further to the north to 45 knots, and seas as high as 24 feet out by St. Matthew Island. Up along the Arctic coastline, strongest winds are down by the Seward Peninsula, around 40 knots out of an easterly direction, dropping off to 15 knots as we get closer up towards Wainwright, and then along the Arctic coastline, seeing lighter winds, only around 10 knots there. As we move into Friday, easterly flow along the Arctic coastline around 20 knots, picking up as we get down the west coast of the state up to as high as 45 knots by the Bering Strait out of a southeasterly direction. Quick recap for tonight's weather. We have a frontal system pushing through the eastern portion of the Bering Sea with some warmer air coming up behind it, bringing in some rain to areas of the eastern Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula, with some snow showers behind it out over the central and western Aleutian Islands. Areas of fog expected to develop along the southwest coastline, and we will have some areas of blowing snow. Look for those winter weather advisories for blowing snow along the west coast. That's going to take effect late tonight into tomorrow morning. Then up along the Arctic coastline, we do have some high pressure up there. It's resulting in some extra cold temperatures with even some light winds causing wind chill advisory conditions throughout the night tonight, all the way along the Arctic coastline and the Brooks Range. And then down in the Panhandle area, some areas of snow in the inside locations down there.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.